I'm Anthony Harper here with Russ Fulcher. Russ, thanks for joining me today.
My privilege. Thanks for having me.
And it's a blessing to talk about some issues, a really serious concern about Common Core and the curriculum here in Idaho, but nationwide there's an issue, I believe, as well. I've met with some parents here recently. There are concerns about the Idaho curriculum and Common Core. You were previously, you were a senator here in Idaho, and he ran for governor as well, and there's an upcoming position running for governor again. But you were in the middle of all this Common Core issue. You were at the Capitol building, and so please share with what your experience was at the Capitol, your knowledge of Common Core, and your concerns about Common Core and our current curriculum here in Idaho.
Thank you for the opportunity, and we'll start at the beginning, at least as I had experience with it. And to understand what happened, you have to understand kind of the dynamic politically that was going on. We had Tom Luna, who was a Republican superintendent of public instruction, and of course a Republican-dominated legislature within the state of Idaho, and then a Republican governor that, along with the superintendent of public instruction, had proposed what is currently known as Common Core. And forgive me for not recalling specifically the date. I want to say it's 2000. When did it come into play? I was in the Senate Education Committee, but anyway, Superintendent Luna had come to the Senate Education Committee and had proposed to our committee the adoption of Common Core. And my recollection of that was we were attempting to work with our colleague, Superintendent Luna, in trying to give him every benefit of the doubt, and of course Governor Otter was championing this as well. And Dr. Harper, it was communicated, it was sold, if you will, to Senate Education Committee as a way where we could statutorily put Idaho in control of our own education system. That's how it was. That's how it was communicated. That's how it was sold.
Okay.
And I remember we had a number of good people on that committee and questioning. And we went through hours of questioning on this. And we even delayed the vote for a couple of weeks when this was coming down. And looking at some of the data, going through this, questioning about the language, what does this really do? And it was, again, I just have to reiterate, it was sold as this is a way to statutorily guarantee that Idahoans are in charge, not some federal bureaucracy. It did pass Senate Education Committee, and it passed unanimously. And this was, again, after probably, I don't know, we delayed it for a couple of weeks because we were trying to question, get more to the bottom of it. And I would say, at least in my own case, and I think the other members of the committee would agree, that there was a certain degree of trust that we all had in the superintendent and in the governor, that their data, their historical information, and the motive moving forward was a genuine one. And so we wound up supporting that. And so technically I'm on record as supporting Common Core. Fast forward several years, and let's take a look at what it really was. And I'm not incriminating the governor, I'm not incriminating the superintendent of public instruction, but what I am saying is it turned out to be something that it was never supposed to be. And that is, I think it's just a reverse. It puts the federal government much more in control of our education system, and it's removed that local decision making by the district, by the teacher, by the parent. And I can go into that specifically why, but I'm sure you probably have a question.
Well, a couple of questions here. I think this sounds like the Obamacare issue. We have to pass this before we know what's in it.
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of incentive for Idaho if they went along with Common Core. I mean, there was some financial benefit for states complying with Common Core and having that, isn't there?
Correct. And so I think you just nailed it. Technically, is it a mandate? No. However, like so many federal programs, like so much federal influence. Here's the situation. You don't have to do this, Idaho, but if you don't qualify for federal money. You don't qualify for the grant, okay? And of course, everybody in the education, all the stakeholders for education, they always want more money, okay? And so there is the lever right there to encourage states to engage with federal programs, Common Core no exception.
Well, a lot of church leaders have concerns about the Common Core and the encroachment of the federal government that is really taking away people's freedoms. And there was that threat for Idaho and other states. If they did, they wouldn't get this federal money. And that coercion that was in play from the leadership in the White House, probably. But it's very serious, that they would pressure the states, and I think there are a lot of church leaders too that would want leaders to stand up to the federal government and say, no, on a moral basis, we won't comply, and we'll believe that we can get through this crisis somehow another way, but rather than compromise with the federal. Right.
So just to be clear, here's how that influence takes place. Once again, I can recall echoing in my mind the messages, hey, Senator Fulcher and the Idaho legislature, there is no mandate here. The teachers can still teach what they want to teach, how they want to teach, and these kind of things. Well, not really, because there's this thing called the SBAC, Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, or...
that sounds about right.
I think that's the acronym. It's SBAC test. And that is the measuring stick by whether or not students are learning under Common Core. And we all know that teachers eventually wind up teaching to the test. So although there is not a mandate on a curriculum per se, there is this test. And when a teacher or when an institution understands that it's going to be measured by how their students do on that, you betcha they're going to teach that test. So that's how Common Core mandates a curriculum. That's how they mandate the content that our children are measured against. And frankly, that's one of the major problems I've got with this. If, by the way, as a result, eliminate the SBAC test, and I think you basically got Common Core.
Wow. That's very significant. Parents also I've been visiting with have concerns about the content and curriculum. I just saw recently one of the textbooks on Islam, an education on Islam being offered to the Middleton School District and probably the other school districts here in Idaho, but yet we have no knowledge of a Christian or any other religious textbook that students can learn from about the history, and that's disturbing by a lot of people.
Yeah, that's I don't know this for a fact, but I would surmise that the reason that is the case, there's probably some content on Islam in the SBAC test. I don't know that, but that's probably how that's coming about. And once again, if I may, because this is just coming back in my mind. The other thing that's so tragic about this is that there's this assumption that the needs for Idaho students are the same as the needs for students in New York or in Connecticut or in California or in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Dr. Harper, as you probably know, the needs for our students are different in Salmon than they are in Boise, than they are in Rigby, than they are in Coeur d'Alene. Because the demographic is different. And that's where the genius of the parent comes into play. That's where the genius of the local teacher comes into play. That's where the structure of the school district is so important. Who am I, as a state senator, former state senator now, to dictate the way that a teacher in Salmon chooses to teach their students, or override what that parent might have to say in Ponderay?
Yeah.
Or, that's what a national education system does, and it's in so many cases I think it's proven to be a dumbing down of the education system and our student base. And these are not simple topics, but Common Core is I believe having a negative impact on our education system.
You know, along with that, the idea about this Islam education textbook that I saw, I think it may have come out about the same time that Governor Otter was dealing with the Syrian refugees. There's influx into Idaho and caving in, and there was the state of Idaho and other states were threatened with not receiving any federal tax dollars if they didn't receive refugees. Is that correct?
Interesting point. I don't know the details about that, but bring up an interesting point because, as you may know, Idaho is the #1 per capita recipient of Syrian refugees in the nation, and and so there is a very strong presence there. That could be. I don't know the detail there, but that could be part of the motivation behind this. There is one other factor, and it's a business-related factor, I think, on why there's so many of those refugees that are coming in.
Yeah.
And that has to do with some of the employment loyalties within where the refugee center is in the Twin Fall areas. It's been been very receptive to those refugees. But nevertheless, when you have those refugees, then you have that influence within the school system, and perhaps that's why there is content on Islam in the state of Idaho.
Or maybe that way nationwide as well, because we've had an influx of a lot of refugees from the countries of Islam, and so parents are really concerned about that. I mean, especially in light of there is no Christian-based education program, so see there's been a preference for Islam over Christianity to some degree.
It underscores the importance of school choice in that regard. The need for the charter school systems, the need for homeschooling, the need for private schools, and frankly, the need for public school. I think that all underscores the need for that school choice movement. But back to, I think, the primary purpose of our discussion here today. I cannot support a federally mandated, federally driven curriculum. Or, frankly, I don't. That's just one area where there's no constitutional grounds for the federal government to be involved with that.
Right.
And I don't think there's a good moral or a good social or a good logical reason why the federal government should be mandating that. The education of our students, the education of our children, is best kept in the hands of our parents, ultimately, and of the local team of teachers and district officials and whatnot that we employ locally here. That's where it belongs. Common Core strips away that control and takes it to some federal third party.
Well, we've talked from time to time about states' rights, and there seems to be a usurping of states' rights, and Idaho should have that right to, and not be intimidated by the federal government on this issue. But in addition, finally, is the issue of concern of data mining. I've talked with a couple of parents about data mining on their children, and questions that they're responding directly to federal government on the issues about the makeup of their home, that if they have guns in their home, or maybe more personal things.
Sure.
I mean, how many people want the federal government to know where the guns are at? And you're thinking about the right to bear arms issues, our Constitution, Bill of Rights, and all those things. But so, what do you know about data mining with SBAC?
Well, I think to understand the impact or potential impact of that, we need to understand why that federal influence is so big in the state of Idaho and other western states, by the way. You and your listening audience may or may not know that most of the land, most of the resources in the state of Idaho and western states are owned and controlled by the federal government. And to be precise, 62%. Okay, wow. of the land. So basically, that means that's federally controlled, and so the access to those resources is subject to federal permission, and the local schools, the local governments, municipalities are not able to charge a property tax on federal land. And so that's where there's federal influence that comes into play here. And so Idaho is dependent on federal subsidies for our schools, for our operations, for roads, for health care, and so on.
Yeah.
So that we have to understand where if you follow the money, then 99% of the time you get to the real motive of what's going on here, okay?
Right.
And so that's why Idaho is subject to this, and why when the federal government comes in, whether it's Common Core or the Affordable Care Act or Medicaid or Medicare or road funding, you name it, why does the Idaho legislature and Idaho leadership tend to take direction from the federal government? Reason being is because we need those subsidies, because we don't control our own destiny, we don't have control of our own land. Involved topic, but it all plays into this. And so when it comes to data mining, no exception. Federal government wants to know who our kids are. They wants to know where they are. They want to know their performance in school and all kinds of information about that. And it's a function of control. Right. If you want to control a society, involve yourself with education, involve yourself with healthcare. And the data gathering helps the government understand all this information about our youth. And with that understanding, with that data comes a certain degree of control. So that's why I oppose the data mining, and of course it's sold in a completely different way. It's sold as if, hey, look, we need to compare ourselves with students in Kansas. We need to compare our students with students in Rhode Island or Holland or China or whatever. They want all this data for that purpose. Dangerous to allow our student information to get into the hands of other people. It opens itself up for all kinds of nefarious purposes, and that's another problem with Common Core and government control over our citizenry overall.
Yeah, there'd be, in addition to this issue, as parents have also, I saw a textbook on homosexuality too. Recently, the Obama administration was pushing through the bathrooms being shared by whoever, and it could be a boy that thinks he's a girl and could use the bathroom or whatever. And it seems to be about that time that this curriculum came into Idaho. But the concern for parents is about programming or indoctrination of kids about other forms of sexuality than a traditional marriage, one man, one woman. Do you know anything about that?
It's simply not the place of government to try to influence that. Dr. Harper, as I reflect back, I spent 10 years in the Idaho Senate. And one of the things I learned over that time is, I would say 90+% of all the legislation that comes before a legislator in the state of Idaho, and probably other states as well, that legislation does one of two things. It either empowers government or it empowers the individual or the family. I would submit to you, and it's my belief, that the United States of America was founded on Christian tenets, a Christian foundation. If you don't believe that, take a look at our commerce system, our legal system. It's all based off of biblical principles.
Right.
And what we have done is we have strayed away from those, and until we get back to those fundamental principles, then I think we're going to continue to decline. And my original point was the family, the individual, is the pinnacle of governance, or it should be. And these federal programs and state programs, for that matter too, have this tendency to replace the family with some kind of a government function, some kind of government agency, government program. It is best suited for the family. The family is that base institution that should be our pinnacle of governance. And until we empower that family again and drum up and support the importance of that family role as that pinnacle of governance, over a bureaucracy, over an agency, then we're going to continue to decline socially and morally in our nation.
Very serious concerns for where America's at. Thank you, Russ, for sharing this information, and I'll look forward to getting an update on what's happening next. So,
my privilege. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.